Okay, let's welcome in Katie Sharp. She's the queen of stats. We have a special reason for inviting her in. Derek Jeter went into the Hall of Fame with the induction. Katie, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Mike. I'm really excited to be here.
Just give us some thoughts as a diehard Yankee fan when it comes to Derek Jeter.
Well, first off, I'll say I grew up in the '90s, the '80s. So Derek Jeter was my favorite player growing up. So I know obviously I'm a bias because I am a Yankee fan, but I love pretty much watching him every day. There was really three things that kind of stood out to me, and I'm gonna just kind of put them into perspective, put my little number spin on it for you. So here we go. So the first thing I think is really just his longevity and his do everything. Like he didn't just hit home runs. He didn't just hit singles. He hit singles. He hit doubles. He drove guys in. He could hit anywhere in the lineup. Most of the time he was hitting, top of the order, but you could put him anywhere. One of my favorite stats, and I know this is cherry picking some numbers a little bit, but it just really puts into perspective the longevity of his career and the fact that he was able to just kind of be this all everything player. He is the only player in Major League history that has at least 3,000 hits, 250 homers, 350 stolen bases, and 1,200 RBIs in his career. So the only player to reach all of those statistical marks in his career. So that's just a testament to obviously played 20 plus years in the majors, but he was able to do everything for that team.
That is a great nugget. You hit the ground running with that one.
I know. I figure I'll come out with a bang. The second thing that really comes to mind for me is his consistency. Just year after year, he was like a metronome, So this is a stat that kind of defines that. Is that for 17 straight seasons from 96 to 2012, he had at least 150 hits. And only one other player in Major League history has done that, and that's Hank Aaron. He also had 17 straight seasons with 150 hits. So to be put in your name, obviously they're both first ballot Hall of Famers. But that just really, to me, that just you knew every season he was gonna hit, and there was no doubt about it.
One way of putting it is, it's an old saying: the best ability is availability, right?
Exactly.
So on top of the skills, he was available, and he answered the bell every
single. Yep. And just the third thing that I kind of wanted to point out is kind of relating to that, the metronome, kind of always being there, is that really nothing fazed him. So no matter what situation he was in, he basically hit the same every time, and it was at an exceptionally good level as well. So we know that in the regular season, he had a .310 batting average and an .817 OPS. In the postseason, a .308 batting average and an .830 OPS. With runners in scoring position, a .301 batting average, .810 OPS. In high leverage situations, and those are ones that are the most pressured in the game, a .311 batting average and an .809 OPS. So it was just, you knew what you were going to get from him. It was going to be a high level of play every single time, no matter if he was the bottom of the ninth down by one with a guy on second, or if it was the first inning of a game in May, you knew that he was going to hit the ball, and you knew that he was going to produce for the Yankees.
Katie, I love it. I love everything that you said. And to further your point, the last point that you just made about the postseason, and now when you talk stats, sometimes you hear that expression SSS, small sample size. Not exactly. Not with Derek Jeter. You know what, Katie? It's a really
he played almost a full season. It was 158 games, I believe.
You hit it right on the head, off the top of your head. 158 games, and he had exactly 200 hits. That's obviously that's an all-time MLB stat. So he leads all players when it comes to postseason in games. We know that, runs scored 111, hits 200 right on the button. Total bases 302. So just as you said, he was a jewel of consistency, and on the biggest stage, the consistency did not tarnish. If anything, as much as I love Derek Jeter, he's an iconic player. The other person I put on the same pedestal with him, not below him, is Mariano Rivera. And I'll tell you why. Just as we're talking about with the postseason, he has the exact same thing in terms of his postseason stats. Is a year's worth. Like he has 42 postseason saves. But here's the thing that's a little bit different than Derek Jeter and everyone else. He has, during the regular season, a 2.20 regular season ERA. And then when he gets to the postseason, it's 0.7. If you pull out a calculator, Katie, that's 3 times better. 3 times better. That is the only thing. And we're talking about Derek Jeter, going to put that off.
Right.
I had to throw that in about, the great Mariano, because the two of them, iconic and generational players that we can only pray we'll see, in the near future with the current Yankees. Everyone talks about the flip, okay? The dive into the stands against the Red Sox, right? 2004, and the flip, 2001. We know that. But any other iconic plays or memories of him that have nothing to do with statistics, but just something that puts a smile on your face every time you think of it?
Well, this is sort of a statistic, but his final hit at Yankee Stadium being the game-winning hit, a walk-off hit to the opposite field. It's magical. I mean, you could not have scripted it any other way. Because obviously being his final home game, having the game-winning hit, and the fact that, that was his MO, was hitting to the opposite field, his ability, his bat control, his ability to put the ball wherever he wanted. Just a single right through the hole between the first and second. I mean, I can picture it every single minute of my life. It's ingrained in my mind. So that's really just probably the most iconic thing for me about Derek Jeter, that basically it sums up his entire career, and it happened in the blink of an eye. It happened in one at bat.
That's great, Katie, and you hit it right on the head. And just that we're kindred spirits. That's what I respect so much about Derek Jeter. The fact that he hit to all fields, and especially he had the proficiency to hit to the opposite field. Because if I had to say what kind of the key to success of the dynasty, okay, when it comes from the offensive side of the ball, just as you talk about Jeter, it was his ability to hit to all fields. And then just think about Met fans, how they must see this in their nightmares. In the World Series at Shea Stadium 2000 against Bobby Jones, leads off the game. What does he do? He pulls a home run.
All right.
So just as you said, it wasn't one thing, it was whatever was needed at that moment. But just as you said, the fact that he hit to all fields, and John Sterling says it perfectly, Jeterian, right? Where he would go that way. At that time in 96, circa 96 to 2000, I was coaching Little League. And one thing that I admired, a million things I admired about Jeter, but was the level swing. And even to the extent, Katie, and tell me if you remember this, when he would take his practice swings before he stepped into the box, and he had a lot of quirky kind of things, adjustments and all of that. But one of the things, Kate, that he did was when he took his practice swings, did you notice they were actually in the downward plane? He would take.
Yeah, I do remember that.
I saw something in a baseball magazine where they were selling something where they wanted you to buy it, and it was tubular steel, and you would take the bat and you would have to pass it through this tubular steel. It was parallel, two tubes parallel to each other, but not parallel to the ground, a little bit on an angle like this. So if the little leaguer didn't want to clank it like that, he'd have to kind of follow through on that plane, just almost like a slight downward sway. I mean, that shows you how much things have changed to the current, with the launch angle and all of that. And that's what I find so interesting about Derek Jeter. He wouldn't necessarily today be an analytics darling, but when you look at the 5 rings and when you look at the body of work, it should give people pause. No?
Yeah, I mean, he showed he could produce in any situation, and his swing was made for any situation. And I think that's something that's lost right now. But yeah, I mean, he could adapt so well to whatever pitch was thrown to him. And yeah, he wouldn't be the analytics darling, probably because he hit the ball on the ground too much. And he didn't hit a lot of fly balls and everything like that. He hit his fair share of homers. But it's not like he was trying to hit a home run every time.
Yeah.
But still, the numbers speak for themselves, and you can't deny that.
How about in the Subway Series game 1, where where they throw Timo Perez out at the plate, and I think it was Todd Zeile that hits the ball. It just hits off the top. The relay throw by Jeter was incredible.
Oh,
He
it's
did it
perfect.
on the run. And that's the thing about the flip play, and that he was always in the right place at the right time. Okay, so he knew he was going to be the cutoff man, but he's thinking, David Justice, maybe his arm isn't that strong. I'm going to go out further, and I'm going to go meet that ball, because I don't think he's going to throw it like a Joey Gallo. You know what I mean? I'm going to meet him. I'm going to just incredible.
Well, his smarts were his baseball smarts were off the charts. I mean, he knew what to do in the situation. And that's because he was so prepared for every situation. He was thinking one step ahead. He's got, you hear about Wayne Gretzky, who was always looking, one pass ahead or looking at the guy down the ice. It's the same thing with Jeter. He knew what he needed to do on every single play, every single pitch that was thrown.
Katie, tell me if you agree with this. What I noticed, and I admit that, from defensive metrics, I can understand where maybe his range wasn't as great as others. We'll leave it at that, and maybe up the middle, etc. But I always felt he was incredible with balls hit in the air, pop-ups, just as we're saying, like, going back on the ball, catching the ball over his head. I think he would have been a great center fielder, just as well as a shortstop, because when you think of his highlight plays, a lot of them were catching pop-ups, diving in to the to the stands, etc., like that. I thought he was just great at catching pop-ups, and I don't know if the metrics actually captured that in terms of his defensive play.
Well, they probably didn't, because I mean, for Jeter with his defense, the way you can talk about it is what I was saying before. It was his consistency. He made every single play that came to him. He made the routine plays. He made a few plays that maybe were a little bit. He made plays that were out of his range, but he was not the flashy guy. He was not going to be sprawling out, backhanding plays in the hole. He just didn't have that range, and that was a limitation. I mean, you can't deny that. The numbers say it. It's unfortunate to say it, but I mean, a lot of those players that do those flashy plays, they can't make the routine plays. So the number of routine plays far outweighs the number of flashy plays that are needed to be made. And if I had a shortstop, I'd rather have a guy that made every single routine play, that made maybe one of 4 flashy plays, and 7 of 10 routine plays.
That's such a great point. And when you look at today's game, whether it's, Gleyber Torres playing shortstop for us, or even if you look across town and you look at the Mets with Lindor, they backed up the Brinks truck for him. He's a great player, etc. But there's many, there's many routine plays sometimes that they don't make, or even Baez, as great a player. You see him getting thrown out on the base paths just on a regular basis, along with the highlight stuff where he's running around the bases and doing all kinds of things. It's kind of almost like a mixed bag. Katie, I go back a lot further than you years-wise. I go back to like the late 60s with I caught the tail end of Mickey Mantle. And what I would say is that in all of my years, and I went through a lot of lean years, unfortunately, in the early 70s with the Horace Clock, era. But what I would say is by far, he was the greatest base runner that I saw, certainly wearing pinstripes. And we know that he leads the Yankees all time with, let's see, you probably know off the top of your head, but stolen bases 358. Okay.
Yeah.
That's a nice number. That's a nice number. But it's not only that, Katie. The way he would go first to third, he went long periods of times, sometimes seasons, without getting thrown out at third base or home plate.
That's incredible. Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah. I mean, especially when you look at the Yankees this season and the mess that they've been on the base paths. Yeah. But like I said, I mean, he knew what to do in every single situation. He's probably the epitome of being not only an exceptionally talented baseball player, but a smart baseball player.
He beat out so many infield hits just with pure hustle and will, and that last stride at the very end just to beat a play at first base. That's another thing, right? Where you can almost close your eyes and see that.
Yeah, that's incredible. Yeah. For me, it's just for me, like I said, it's the consistency, it's the metronomism, and it's the fact that, I mean, he really enjoyed playing the game. I mean, the image that I have of him is actually just smiling. Whether he's on the field and he's at second base and some guy just arrived at second and turns to him and smiles, or he just got a hit and he reaches first base and he goes to take off his batting gloves or whatever, and he's smiling. He's at the plate, he's adjusting his whatevers, getting ready to hit, but he's smiling. And that's the most important thing.
And you know what
you
else?
have fun, you play this game, it's a kid's game, but they get paid to do it.
Right. And talking about threading the needle and walking that fine line, he had the intensity, but he never got thrown out of a game.
Yeah.
And just almost, if I had to put a caption or a slogan to him, like, because of what a number two, too good to be true. And
That's good.
and the other, how many guys took the number two to Tulowitzki, right? And on and on.
Exactly.
And on. So
Yeah.
Katie, I want to thank you for a couple of minutes, and it was an absolute pleasure speaking to you. Just love your work, enjoy your work so much. I don't know how you do it. I mean, you probably got 9 monitors going on at one time. Are you like Jeter in a sense, where sometimes you're looking ahead to be in the right place at the right time, where you
don't give away my secrets here now.
All right.
But I'm also, I do a lot of anticipating, and it's just knowing the numbers and just knowing the situations and knowing what to look for. I do a lot of reading, and I love the game so much. I don't mind it at all.
Katie, thank you so much for a couple of minutes. You call yourself the queen of stats, and I say Katie Sharp. You know what? She is the sharpest tool in the shed.
Thank you so much, Mike. It was a pleasure talking to you.